immigration scenario of the film Brothers. What were the circumstances? Following the review we've already done of the film Brother, 2022, directed by Clement Virgo, a Canadian-Jamaican production that was critically acclaimed, we want to analyze in this video the migration situation portrayed in the film during the years in which the story takes place. The two brothers and their mother live specifically in Ontario, in a neighborhood called Scarborough, one of the many communities formed as a result of immigration to Canada during those years. What was happening at that time in different countries, and specifically in Canada, that caused these migration processes to leave such an important mark not only on cinema, but also on local and international literature? In the 1990s, Canada transformed its system to prioritize the arrival of immigrants with high levels of human capital, expanding its annual targets from 84,000 to 250,000 people. The government implemented a 5-year plan to counter population aging, consolidating the points-based system to attract skilled workers. Instead of looking for workers for specific trades, the country began selecting highly educated and skilled candidates who had the potential to integrate quickly and contribute to the labor market. The proportion of European immigrants began to decline, while the arrival of people from Asia, Eastern Europe, following the collapse of the Soviet bloc, and the Caribbean increased significantly. Internationally, the 1990s were marked by accelerated globalization, the collapse of communist regimes, and the outbreak of ethnic conflicts, factors that triggered massive population displacement and reshaped global migration flows. The dissolution of the USSR in 1991 and the opening of borders allowed millions of people from Eastern Europe to emigrate to Western Europe, especially Germany, and to North America in search of economic stability. The war in the former Yugoslavia, ethnic conflict and campaigns of ethnic cleansing in the Balkans caused the largest refugee crisis in Europe since World War II, displacing more than 2 million people to neighboring countries and overseas destinations. The Rwandan genocide, 1984. The mass killing of the Tutsi population triggered an unprecedented humanitarian crisis, causing more than 2 million Hutu and Tutsi refugees to flee within a matter of weeks to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, then Zaire, Tanzania, and Burundi. The Somali Civil War. Collapse of the Somali government in 1991 plunged the country into famine and prolonged armed conflict, forcing hundreds of thousands of refugees to flee to camps in Kenya, Yemen, and later to Europe and the Americas. The transfer of Hong Kong, 1997. Amid uncertainty surrounding the handover of the British colony to the People's Republic of China, hundreds of thousands of middle and upper-class Hong Kong residents emigrated preemptively, mainly to Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom. The Cuban rafter migration crisis, 1994. Following the collapse of Soviet subsidies, Cuba entered the special period of severe economic crisis. Tens of thousands of Cubans took to the sea in precarious boats, forcing the United States to modify its reception policy. Consolidation of Mexico-U.S. migration. The implementation of NAFTA in 1994 and the Mexican peso crisis, tequila effect, accelerated both internal and cross-border labor migration, consolidating what was then the largest migration corridor in the world. The United Nations redefined its humanitarian strategy in the 1990s in response to an unprecedented number of simultaneous crises. It established massive refugee camps to shelter millions of displaced people simultaneously in the African Great Lakes region, following the Rwandan genocide, and along the Iraq-Turkey border to protect the Kurdish population. The so-called safe zones were created. However, this strategy revealed severe structural shortcomings when UN forces failed to prevent military attacks against unarmed civilians, leading to intense international criticism of the limitations of peacekeeping mandates. Traditionally, international law protected only those who crossed an international border. In the 1990s, the UN pragmatically began assisting and protecting the millions of internally displaced people who fled violence within their own countries but were unable to leave them. Who among those listening to this analysis remembers those times? The film depicts an immigrant neighborhood, but also the result of the country's efforts to provide employment for these families, allowing them to have a roof over their heads and food on the table every day while the world remained in turmoil. How do you think Canada handled this process?